Good day, you're watching Business World Live. I'm Danie, Laurel.
And I'm Delos Santos. Here are today's top stories. The World Bank warns that unchecked climate change could slash the domestic economy by more than 13% by the year 2040.
The Marcos Jr. administration is set to allow the voluntary use of face masks indoors, but with a few exceptions. The government will also loosen travel requirements to ease the entry of foreign visitors to the Philippines.
Three major business groups throw their weight behind calls for the total shutdown of POGO operations in the country.
And Bangko Sentral Governor Felipe Medallia says the Monetary Board may increase interest rates by another 75 basis points in November to match the U.S. Federal Reserve's looming rate hike. We begin our broadcast with the World Bank warning that climate inaction could substantially slash the country's economic output by 2040. The multilateral lender says the Philippines may see an average loss of up to 3.2% in its GDP by 2030 due to climate change and as much as 5.7% in 2040. The World Bank warns that the impact could be much worse if no actions are taken by the government and the private sector. The lender says climate inaction could see 13.6% of the domestic GDP lost by 2040, with the worst effects likely hitting capital-intensive industries. The World Bank says the country is, quote, uniquely vulnerable to climate change. And in 2022, it noted that the Philippines ranked first among the nations most affected by extreme weather events. The lender says climate change in the Philippines is not a silent crisis, but an imposing problem and a real threat. Now, last year, the Finance Department said that climate-related hazards have resulted in more than 500 billion pesos worth of losses and damage to the country over the past decade.
Top business groups have expressed their support for the total ban on Philippine offshore gaming operators or POGOs, citing a recent spike in crime and money laundering risks involving the industry. A joint statement by the Foundation for Economic Freedom, the Makati Business Club, and the Management Association of the Philippines says the social and reputational costs of government sponsorship of operations that are globally frowned upon far outweigh any economic benefits. The group also believes that the money laundering risks associated to POGOs are diminishing confidence in the country's banking system. This is also seen to put the country's financial flows at risk from sanctions of international oversight bodies. The group also noted that the decline in the POGO industry's performance since the onset of the pandemic should be enough to suggest that it is time for government to let POGOs go. The groups also believe that suffering economic strains in the event of a total ban on POGOs would be more bearable than enduring socio-economic consequences that come with letting POGOs continue. Now let's pause for a quick break, but coming right up after that. Bangko Sentral Governor Felipe Medallia says there is a need for steeper rate hikes to prop up the peso and to curb soaring inflation.
More of that and other stories when Business World Live returns. Stay with us.
And you're still watching Businessworld live here in One News. I'm Delos Santos.
And I'm Danie, Laurel.
BSP Governor Felipe Medallia says the Bangko Sentral may have to respond to the U.S. Federal Reserve point by point as the interest rate differential has become too narrow. Medallia says the BSP may be forced to match the U.S. Fed's rate hikes given the country's inflation and peso depreciation. He said the Monetary Board is likely to deliver another 75 basis point hike on November 17th, as the U.S. Fed is expected to raise policy rates by 75 basis points on November 2nd. The BSP has so far raised interest rates by 225 basis points this year to 4.25%. However, while Medallia sees the need for steeper rate hikes, he is still against excessive tightening just to keep the peso from reaching a certain level. He says output loss would be greater if the BSP is forced to raise interest rates more than it should.
Now, manufacturers of canned sardines are calling for a 3 peso price hike on their products as costs of imported raw materials increase. Meanwhile, canneries have signed a deal with the government to ensure a sufficient supply of the product during the closed fishing season. Jenny Dongon with this report.
The Canned Sardines Association of the Philippines, or CSA, previously warned of a possible shortage of the commodity. This as commercial catching of tamban will be prohibited from December to March. The closed fishing season allows certain types of fish to reproduce and mature. To ensure enough supply, CSAP and the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, or BFAR, signed an agreement. Under the deal, manufacturers may only get their supply of tamban from small-scale fishers for the time being.
From the data we have, the local fisher folks have a difficult time selling tamban because it's not usually bought by consumers because the fish has a lot of bones, has a lot of scales.
The BFAR said over 8.5 million pesos will also be allocated for post-harvest support and needed equipment.
Doon sa proper handling in order for the sardines to be compliant with the quality requirement of the processing plants. Doon din ho, tuturuan natin yung sorting, kung paano i-sort at i-discriminate yung mga sardines na po pwede pumunta ng processing.
But some fish sellers already find it difficult to get their supply of tamban.
Wala na ako nakikita rin sa Malabon kasi parang kinukuha na yun ng mga nagsasardines. Binubultuhan kasi makakaroon yata ng fishing bans.
Wala akong dating na tamban ngayon eh. Yung bawal.
Manufacturers of sardines are also calling for a 3 peso increase in the price of canned goods. They explained that costs of raw materials from abroad are also on the rise.
Hindi naman kami bumabawi doon sa 3 pesos. Pinaliliit lang yung nagiging kalugihan. So 2019 pa yung presyo ng sardinas from then up to 2022. That's painful for our industries.
For now, the Trade Department has yet to approve or reject the request. For News 5, Jenny Dongon, we are One News.
Don't go away, we'll bring you more stories when we return.
Stay with us. Business World Live will be right back after this short break.
You're still watching Businessworld live here in One News. I'm Delos Santos.
And I'm Danie, Laurel.
President Bongbong Marcos is set to issue an executive order on the voluntary use of face masks indoors. This was announced by Tourism Secretary Cristina Frasco. Though the order has yet to be formally issued, Frasco says the direction of the Marcos administration is to lift travel restrictions, including mask mandates indoors, to keep the tourism sector competitive. The DOT chief notes that this move will also support economic recovery.
The new variant is being managed by the DOH while the government is considering ways with which our economy can recover. We simply cannot go on in a pandemic perspective because we have to give our country an opportunity to thrive.
Frasco said face masks will still be mandatory in public transport, medical transport, and medical facilities. Senior citizens, persons with comorbidities, and unvaccinated individuals are also encouraged to keep their masks on. For the Health Department, everyone should be encouraged to keep their masks on to ensure the prevention of COVID-19 transmission.
I think for us, clear sa amin that we want to continue encouraging people, no? Parang hindi kayo pinagbabawal na mag-wear ng mask.
Now, the Tourism Department says other health protocols like pre-departure RT-PCR testing will also be removed for vaccinated individuals. But for unvaccinated travelers, there will only be allowed entry to the Philippines after presenting a negative antigen test taken 24 hours before departure or upon arrival. Frasco notes that easing tourism restrictions allows the country to be at par with its ASEAN neighbors.
The direction of the Marcos administration is to lift the remainder of travel restrictions into the Philippines, and that includes easing of our mask mandates to allow our country to be at par with our ASEAN neighbors who have long liberalized their mask mandates.
How ready is the private sector? Should mask wearing be officially made voluntary in indoor establishments? Let's get insights from Joey Concepcion, founder of Negosyo. Sir Joey, good day. Your thoughts on that, the possibility of the president issuing an EO making mask wearing voluntary indoors. Will this not do more harm than good?
No, I don't believe it will do more harm. I mean, if I look at it, I've been traveling around the world and trying to look at, and seeing how people are adjusting towards COVID-19. In fact, our ASEAN neighbors, as Secretary Cristina Frasco said, that it's very important that we remain competitive to be able to attract tourists. No? So what the government is removing is just the mandate, no? And it's allowing Filipinos to decide whether they would like to take the risk or not, no? And depending on the age, people already, I've been saying this time and time again, that we have been in this pandemic for the last 2 years. It's about time that people know when it is risky. But the only exception to this is public transportation. Okay. So they're not removing that. But in restaurants and etc., give the people the choice. And if we are confident, and OCDE says that their last research shows that a lot of Filipinos will still wear masks even after COVID, and that's great. Nobody's stopping people from wearing masks. But for those who believe that they don't need to wear a mask, the risks are low, then allow them to do so.
But what message does this send, considering the fact that we have yet to have a full-time health secretary who has a full control over the pandemic situation? Add to that, of course, the local transmission of the XBB and the XBC subvariant.
I don't think we have Yusek Rosette, who is not officially the secretary, but she is performing her role as best as possible. And I think we've been moving along pretty well. Whether vaccination rates are going up, I think some people are just tired of it and maybe just want to go for natural immunity. I mean, we cannot wait for things to happen. I mean, the rest of the world, and we're facing a strong economic headwind. We really have to ensure that every sector will be resilient as these headwinds start to hit us, and it is hard hitting us. Our peso has gone down because interest rates are moving up. Commodity prices are continuing to go up. And manufacturers like ourselves cannot pass the price increase all to the consumers at once, because then the consumers will start buying, not buying, and then you have a weakening of the economy, then you head towards the recession. So what America is doing is trying to slow down the American economy, and that can lead to some kind of recession. And then they switch on to lowering interest rates. But what if they miscalibrate and we head towards U.S. recession and the whole world starts moving in that direction? Then that's a problem. So the president is correct. Let us compete with our neighbors. Tourism is a very huge sector where many MSMEs play in that field. And the tourists will bring in the dollars here or the euros.
Sir, can you say that there are specific protocols, areas in government, even healthcare, that has significantly improved during the COVID-19 pandemic? For instance, are we now at a level that we can say that, things have improved in the ways that children will be safe going to schools without a mask, people will be safe going to using public transport, going to the offices? Were there significant changes made for people to say, okay, I feel safe to take off my mask?
Well, again, for example, like public transportation, I don't think President Marcos is removing that. No, mask mandate in public transportation will continue, from what I hear, and that's rightly so, because the buses and the jeeps are very tight. But allowing people to make the decisions, their choice, whether they wear masks in schools or not, I think it's a fair thing. I mean, if you're in an open field, why will you wear a mask? If you're in a canteen without aircon, and most canteens don't have aircons, then why will you have to wear a mask? And these people are young. So if they get sick, chances are it will be mild. I mean, all my kids got sick, and most of them have been totally mild. So I think we just have to realize that we've had COVID. Our people know the risk, and people have not, our booster rates have not gone up. No, it's remained in the 20s. America is at about close to 50s, but you can see now a stall. No, not many Americans are also taking their booster shots. So people are tired. So a lot of people have gotten sick. So natural immunity is also going to help us, because those who are willing to take the risk and do get sick will have natural immunity.
Okay, sir, so what does that mean for what you want to achieve in terms of vaccination rate? Are we still going to be pushing for vaccination, pushing for second booster shots? Or is this something, hopefully of the past na, something for maybe just the immunocompromised or an optional thing?
Yes, that's correct. The way I see it, I sent you, Secretary, a letter. She responded on our suggestion that the private sector role in the next bivalent vaccine will not to put up a tripartite and purchase these vaccines.
Okay.
We hope that the government will buy the vaccines. We will submit our list of employees who are willing to take the vaccines. We're willing to vaccinate them so we can help them in the whole program. That's far as we go. And I think the focus of the bivalent vaccines will be towards those at the highest risk levels and those who are immunocompromised, the seniors, etc. Because the government cannot buy millions and millions of vaccines now. I mean, it's just too expensive. So we have to direct those vaccines towards the most vulnerable group in our population.
Sir, what's going to happen to the vaccines that have not been used? Are there vaccines that are to expire na hindi na po nagamit?
Well, I realistically, if the current trend is this way, I'm sure our vaccines will not last forever, and they too will expire. And that's why, COVAX is supposed to replace them. I don't know if they've replaced them. But then again, people are already hearing about bivalent. It's coming in. I'd rather wait for that. So the bivalent will actually even reduce the interest of people wanting to take the current vaccine, because they know that the bivalent will be coming in. But if I were in their situation and I am at a risk, I will take what I have right now, because it will still protect people from getting severe COVID. No?
Do we take it to mean, Sir Joey, as well, that we should at least ease up as well on the vaccination? Is that the point of view that you are taking here, and just focus more on the vulnerable population instead of targeting as much as possible a larger group of the population?
Well, it depends on the capability, financial capability of the government. If they're going to bring, a huge number of vaccines, that's going to be a huge amount. So I think what they will do is target that population, and I agree with that. I'm guessing, but I believe that's the direction. With 10 or 20 million doses that will come in, you can only target the most vulnerable group in our population, and the rest. Okay, that's why it's important to have sufficient supply of molnupiravir, Paxlovid, and other antibodies and medicines, antiviral medicines, so that if you get sick, there is you can take these medicines. And of course, our doctors are already well adversed, quite knowledgeable on what the treatment works. So there are still people who are dying but they have other comorbidities. But the greater part of the population is getting infected. I was sharing with some friends that my entire household, prior to arriving from the States, they were all infected. We had to remove everybody from my home and transfer them to quarantine centers. But in 7 days, they're back with me and all negative. And none of them, maybe except for one, had more or less a more serious case of persistent coughing. So, but in general, I think this is what we have to expect in the months, the years.
Sir, can we let go of testing as well?
Isn't that going to be a point of concern? We're letting go of masks. Theoretically, if that comes into a formal rule here, at the same time, like what you mentioned earlier, a bit of easing as well in the vaccination. Is it not going to be a point of concern if we are going to let go of RT-PCR testing? Okay, we seem to be having some technical difficulties here, trying to connect to...
but nevertheless, clear mandate here, no? He mentioned it should be our choice to be able to do so, self-regulation, especially for those
It's going
who
to be a
have
matter of personal choice.
Yeah, personal choice is something that he mentioned was very key here. And in terms of vaccination, again, focusing on the most vulnerable population is still very important. So thank you again. That was, of course, Julie Concepcion, Go Negosyo founder.
And those are the biggest stories on the economic and corporate front today. I'm Jess Delos Santos.
And I am Danie Laurel. We are One News, all sides, all the time. But don't go away. We'll give you the latest on the local bourse when Businessworld Live returns. Stay with us.
And you're still watching Businessworld Live here on One News. Now, Dan, very tough balancing act here for the central bank with another looming jumbo rate hike here. What's Bloomberg saying about where the peso is headed?
All right. So again, you have the finance chief, Ben Diokno, saying that we should defend the peso not to breach 60. And then you have Governor Felipe Medallia saying, it's not the end of the world, basically, if we see it at 61. And as to your point, you have a median estimate of Bloomberg survey of analysts that it will decline to 59.50 by the year end. But you do have some on the higher or weaker range of that. You've got, for instance, MUFG saying that it might hit 62. Just as of today, it is at 58.695. So a bit of some strengthening there on the back of some comments that we might be meeting the Fed point per point if they do raise to 75 bips. Now, quick check on the markets. A bit of a reprieve this morning. It did open in the red, but now it seems to be firming up once again at 6,080 levels here. And of course, just a quick peek at Wilcon Depot, which did released their earnings yesterday. Profit jumped 78% to 1.1 billion pesos, Jess, and the sales rose 77.5% in the third quarter. The income there, and they did mention that if you look at the comparable growth, that was 23.5% up year on year. They did mention a lot more private construction happening, and if you take a look at how the stock is, performed in the past 3 days, up by 5 3/10%.
And that's it for today, October 26, 2022. Join us again tomorrow at exactly 9:30 a.m. You can also catch us on Signal Play. Register for your free account now at www.signalplay.com and stream One News Live anytime, anywhere. I'm Jess De Los Santos.
And I'm Danie, Laurel. Stay safe, Philippines. We are One News, all sides, all the time.